Barb Jungr, a multifaceted artist with a 45-year recording career, is renowned for her exceptional talents as a performer, writer, composer, and lyricist. Her profound and passionate interpretive style has earned her critical acclaim, described as revelatory by the New York Times. With 18 solo albums under her belt, many released through Linn Records, Jungr's work has garnered exceptional reviews and numerous awards worldwide. In 2011, she received the New York Nightlife Award for Outstanding Cabaret Vocalist, the Backstage Bistro Award for Best International Artist, and Time Out New York's recognition as the #1 top live cabaret artist for the year. Jungr's distinctive singing style transcends musical boundaries and defies easy categorization. As Glam Adelaide aptly put it, it's as Edith Piaf and Nick Cave had a love child who was adopted by Carmen McRae. Her latest album, My Marquee, was released in June 23, preceded by a live EP of Leonard Cohen songs titled Bob, Brel and Me in November 2022. Barb's work extends to reinterpreting the songbooks of legendary artists like Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Nina Simone, Jacques Brel, forming the genre of the New American Songbook. Throughout her career, Jungr's deconstruction and reconstruction of popular songs, as well as her unique musical arrangements, provide fresh insights into familiar music. She's collaborated with numerous musicians, including John McDaniel, and continues to push the boundaries of her art. As a lyricist and composer, Barb's creative prowess shines in her Christmas shows such as Charlie Cook and His Favorite Book, The Smartest Giant in Town, and The Pixie and the Pudding, all running in December 2023. Her contributions to children's theatre productions and adaptations underscore her versatility and creative spirit. Originating from Rochdale with Czech and German heritage, Barb's musical journey began early with the violin and mandolin, eventually leading her to a recording career with CBS in the late 70s. She's toured the world, collaborated with renowned musicians, and made notable appearances on radio and television. Her eclectic vocal style blends jazz, blues, soul, and more, influenced by a diverse range of musical traditions. Her impact as an artist and interpreter of iconic songs cannot be overstated. Her artistry has earned her critical acclaim, and she continues to captivate audiences with her transformative and genre-defying performances. Barb, welcome.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Thank you for that. That was just lovely. I was listening to that and thinking, oh, my goodness me. I've just come back from walking the dog.
It is an impressive career, but I was doing some research when you very kindly agreed to do this interview. And am I right in reading that you started out your career as a psychiatric nurse, or is that wrong?
No, that's not me.
That's not you.
No, nobody would hire me for that. Got to be really desperate.
I always like to know how my guests are introduced to music. How do they encounter music? What's your earliest memory?
Oh, we had the radio on all the time. My mum and dad loved music. They took me to a lot of live performances in Manchester. And I used to see these kind of variety shows with a glamorous lady in a sequined gown singing. And at home, we had on Nat King Cole. And I remember when Walking Back to Happiness was a big single with Helen Shapiro running down the road. So I have lots of musical memories. My dad took me to the opera when I was young. Yeah, he thought it was. He told me that it was very hard to get people to play Carmen because she has to be killed on stage, and nobody really wanted to do it because it's a great role, and then killed. And I believed that. For ages, I thought that was true. And when I told him later that I believed it, he said, "You idiot."
So your parents Tell us about your ancestry, your unique ancestry.
Well, my dad's a Bohemian Czech, um, and he came
What
over.
do you mean by Bohemian Czech?
Well, he comes from the area of Bohemia. Yeah, so his family came from Bohemia, and he came to England just after the war. My mother came just after the war, but she came from Germany, and both of them had had a very traumatic time for different reasons, and they met in Rotherham, which is hilarious. And then they were married and moved to, well, lived in Rochdale, and I grew up in a street that looked like the old-fashioned Coronation Street. You know, we had no inside bathroom. We had a toilet out the back, you know, yard. Um, it was no mod cons. Do you know what I mean? So I didn't grow up in privilege.
I was going to say, because your parents taking you out to see shows,
Mm.
that obviously costs a lot of money. But as you say, your parents, you didn't come from privilege. So I imagine they were just working class, but it was an absolute treat to be able to go out and experience these things.
Well, they weren't any class because they weren't English. Do you know what I mean? So we lived in a working class environment and community, but they had all of this European stuff going on. So for them to see live shows, to hear live music, that was as important as eating.
So what was the station on in those days when you were listening to the radio in the house?
I don't know, would have been the BBC, would have been just the, whatever it was called, BBC, I suppose. I mean, I remember when Radio Caroline happened.
What do you remember
That
about
was great.
Caroline?
Oh, I loved it. I used to listen to it under my covers, and my mum would come home from work because she worked nights, and she'd come up, and I'd have to be really quiet and make sure that it was turned right down so she couldn't hear it.
Fond days. So who were you listening to by choice on the radio? What was exciting you, or which artist was exciting you at that age?
Well, I suppose really early on, it was absolutely classic people. Frankie Sinatra, my dad called him Frankie. Frankie Sinatra and yeah, Nat King Cole, and Peggy Lee, all of those people, they were on the radio. But then, just as I was in that sort of puberty phase, that's when the 60s happened in musically. And so I was right there as the door opened and I was in heaven. You know, Cilla Black, my goodness, Dionne Warwick. Oh, that was just such a great time.
So do you in any notion of wanting to get into the entertainment industry at that particular time, or was it just a passing pleasure listening to all these artists?
I don't think I didn't come from a background where you're clearly talented. We must foster that happened. So my parents paid for me to have violin lessons, and I was musical at school. But because I didn't have an operatic voice, I all kind of got overlooked there. Uh, but my violin playing, I was in the orchestra and stuff like that. Um, I think they didn't. Well, they would have been really happy if I'd had a profession, which when it became a profession, they were very proud. But at the beginning, I think they were a bit baffled and disappointed. But I didn't have a sense of wanting to. In retrospect, which is interesting, everybody could see it except me. So when I was 5, I used to put on the front step of our little Coronation Street terrace, I used to do plays with my dolls. And as people came past, I said, "Do you want to watch a play?" And then, I was always in the concerts. I was always doing tomfoolery, like mimicking things and doing I'm Just Wild About Harry and stuff like that. So all my schoolmates now go, "Oh, this was obvious from the start," but it wasn't obvious to me.
That's fascinating. Um, you're not an only child, are you, if I remember?
No, but I was an only child psychologically because I was 7 when my sisters were born.
Right, so you're the eldest.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So perhaps this interest was you acquiring a sort of family through the musical acts that you were carrying out, perhaps.
I don't know. I don't know. That's an interesting idea. Um, I think I just love people singing. I mean, I loved Maria Callas. She was a big star in our house. I loved Maria Callas, and I just loved great singing.
So you're talking about your peers at school knew you had this artistry and talent about you. Were you a good student at school? Did you enjoy being at school?
Yeah, I was sort of medium good. I was um I was academically bright, but I was naughty, but I wasn't bad. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't a bad girl, but if there was naughtiness to be done, I would be doing it.
I'd love to know what those naughty antics could have been.
Oh, little tricks with things, farty things or locking people's cupboards
Well,
and stuff
fun
like
rather than
that.
naughty, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Do you know, I can't imagine that about you. You've got an interesting selection of tracks here, and I'm really excited to go through them with you. I want to get on to your first choice, which is Nina Simone. Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Why have you selected this one?
Well, I love Nina Simone, and I don't know, there's something about Nina Simone that I find extraordinarily powerful and also self-informed and self-aware. I mean, and I know her relationship history was terrible, um, which kind of belies that a bit, but she was such an extraordinary performer and musician, and I love her voice because there's something about it that just goes, "Nah, no nonsense." And "Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood" is a really interesting message, isn't it? Because who doesn't feel misunderstood? Um, and I love that kind of aching anger that's in that song.
Interesting to hear you say that she was self-informed, self-aware. I agree. Um, it's just an unmistakable voice.
Mm.
Um, what age were you when you sort of came across this and it resonated with you?
I don't remember when I heard that track first. I think probably first I heard "My Baby Just Cares for Me," or maybe even "Wild is the Wind." Definitely she was on the radio, but for me, that song really speaks. I mean, well, everything she ever did speaks.
I just want to go back to your parents because there was nothing musical about them whatsoever, but yet they were very happy to encourage you to learn the violin and pay for you to
Oh,
have
no,
music lessons.
they loved music, Diane. They
No, but
loved it.
not to as musicians or anything musical themselves.
Well, my dad used to sing when he was drunk. He used to sing opera when he was drunk, standing on the coal bunker. But my mum had played the piano as a girl.
So there was
Uh,
something there.
there was something there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you feel when your first sister came along, age 7, and disrupted what you were used to?
Oh, I didn't mind. I loved her. She was such a perfect little baby, and somebody came round to ask if they could walk her, and I screamed, "No, you can't. She's my sister."
And did they listen to you?
Yes. They went away. They were really upset. I really upset them.
And were you close to your parents before your sister came along? Do you remember it being particularly close?
Yeah, because they well, my I mean, I now know all of this now, But my mum used to wheel me around in the pram, and she used to take me to auctions and antique auctions. She loved that. She loved watching the sale of things and the old objects. She loved that. So she took me around in the pram, and I think there was a sort of very deep bond formed that even though in my teenage years, because I was rebellious, um, it was upset, it never broke. It never even fractured really. That bond was there. My dad, I mean, I felt sorry for my sisters because I think I was my dad's favourite. So I would just get very cross with him and tell him what I thought. And he would say, "Oh, you always think you know best." And I said, "Well, doesn't everybody?" And he went, "Oh, yes, you're right." But we had a, yeah, we had a very close relationship, but he was a difficult and troubled man. He had been in the German work camps and was traumatized for much of his life.
How much of that trauma did you understand growing up?
None, absolutely none.
When did he or your mother or both speak to you of this experience?
Not till I was much older when I worked it out. I worked it out for myself, really. Um, and towards the end of his life, he opened up a lot about his experience, and I came to understand that I'd never understood him, because you can't if you don't know.
How did that impact you upon that realization?
I think I was sad, I think it would have been helpful, but I don't know if I would have had the wherewithal emotionally to understand. I mean, when you're young, that's not what it's for, youth. Youth is for forging forth and thinking you know everything. And actually understanding, I think, comes with time and life. I mean, you're a parent, so I think you're probably living this.
Well, I can relate to some of your own experiences because that generation really didn't talk about a lot, did they?
No.
But it's interesting to hear you talk about this and how it impacted you because of your song choices and
Yeah.
because of what you do. It's enlightening me. And it's helping me to understand you in a different way because we've worked together.
Yeah.
It's helping me to understand that part of you, which I don't think I would have learned necessarily unless we had one big chat one day and sat down a bottle of wine or something, even though I don't
Yes.
drink.
But I
you
would
know,
have been very drunk.
you know, I love people and I love interviewing people, particularly through music. And music just is a powerful medicine in triggering memories.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I want to ask you before we get on to your next choice, how your mother, we know love just surpasses everything, but how did your mother cope with such a challenging man? Did she know of this trauma that he went through?
Well, I think she was traumatized as well, and I think they fell in love, and I think love does it all, and then she had her family, and she loved us beyond reason. She'd have stood on the line and killed for us, and that's a powerful thing.
Second choice. I heard it through the grapevine. Marvin Gaye. A very popular choice when I do these interviews.
Well, I remember the Top of the Pops when they played it first time, and there was a video of this woman in bell bottoms on a railroad track, and the camera panned up these legs that were amazingly long. And then came this extraordinary voice, and this, all the pain that's in Marvin Gaye's voice, and all the joy, and all the religion, all the preaching, all of it was in there. I didn't know that then, but I felt it. And for me, Tamla Motown, I mean, I was very fortunate because I met Berry Gordy when the musical Tamla Mo whatever it was called, opened. And I had gone to see it with my theatrical agent. She said, "Oh, I've got somebody in it, and I've got a press night ticket. Do you wanna come?" And I said, "Oh, all right, but I'm at the gym." And she said, "Oh, just come straight from the gym." So I go straight from the gym, and I've got gym clothes on and a jacket. And we're in there, and I'm hating this musical because I'm going, the tempo of that's wrong. They've 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 mashed that with another track. Why have they mashed that with that? Why have they taken the bits? I was furious. Anyway, so I'm resolutely angry about it. And every time everybody cheers, I'm going, well, they're idiots. They don't know what they're cheering at. And then, and at the end, everybody stood up, and I went, oh, standing ovation. All the tempos were wrong. And then out came Berry Gordy. And I jumped up and down like a jack in a box, shouting, "It's Berry Gordy! It's Berry Gordy! It's Berry Gordy! The man's a genius!" And Catherine said to me, "Are you okay?" And then Smokey Robinson came out, and then came out Mary Wilson. So I'm jumping up and down. Anyway, so she said, "Listen, I've got tickets to the party. You want to come?" And I went, "Oh, they're always horrible. If you're not in a show, why, you know?" She goes, "Oh, well, I won't go if you don't go." So I said, "All right, I'll go." So we go. And I said, "Oh, maybe I'll see Barry Gordy and I can tell him what Tamla Motown meant to me." She said, "Oh, Bob, they'll be in the VIP enclosure." And I said, "Well, look, we'll go in." She said, "Well, I haven't got VIP ticket." Well, I see the VIP enclosure. I'm in my gym clothes. I walked in. Do you think anybody stopped me? I went, "Come on." So she followed me in, and in comes Mary Wilson. And Mary Wilson is wearing this floor length gown. She looks like the prow of a ship. Hair, fantastic, beautiful, beautiful goddess, beautiful woman. I know somebody I work with who she works with. So I said, "Aren't you a mate of Jim Gavin's?" And she went, "Yes." And I said, "I'm Barb." And she went, "Barb!" And threw her arms around me. Well, so now everybody's like, "Oh, oh, oh." A woman in gym clothes. In comes Berry Gordy. And he's surrounded by minders. He's got minders. There's all the way around him, 4. And they've all got those little wiggly things out their ears. And he's walking in. And you mean, he was a gangster. He was. Because he couldn't have done what he did. In those times, in those days in Detroit,
Yep.
come on, of course. Anyway, in he comes. So I ducked underneath the bouncer's arms, popped my head up like a koi pew in front of him, and I said, "Mr. Gordy, can I have a couple of minutes of your time?" And he went, "Sure." And I said, "I just want to tell you that you changed my life. The music you made, the artists you discovered, they're part of the reason I've had a career. And I just want to be able to thank you in person." And he hugged me, and I had a picture with him, and I was happy. And I said, "I can go home now. I'm done. I'm clean."
I want to know, what was the look on your theatre agent's face when she witnessed you doing that?
Well, I think she was just waiting for me to be thrown out by my feet.
Do you think you could do that in this day and age with an icon?
Yeah, that was only about 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very recent. Yeah.
So when did Barb start pursuing a musical career?
Well, I'd always done music at home, and then we formed a group when I was at school, and it was me and Sally and Sue and Irena, and they all played the guitar, and I played the violin, and we sang mournful songs. Don't you want somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? Grace Slick, I thought she was great. And we sang, songs like that, and we played our mournful guitars, and we did the local folk clubs. We were at school. I mean, had that happened 40 years later, we'd have been on television, you know? But because it was a different world, we played in Manchester in these nightclubs, these 4 schoolgirls. "Don't you want somebody to build a violin?"
And where did it go from there, your
Well, I went to
career?
university to study botany,
Why
and then
botany?
because, I quite liked it, and I had to go to university to kind of calm the tide at home, and I
Explain.
wanted to go to Leeds because of the Who Live at Leeds, because
Let
the
me
Who
take you
Live at
back.
Leeds.
I want to take you
Yeah.
back. Calm what tide at home? Explain.
Oh, you must have a job, you must can't you be a doctor, et cetera. So I thought, well, if I go to university and do science, that'll be great. And I liked biology and I was good at it. So I went to Leeds, and because of the Who Live at Leeds, and I enjoyed 3 years there where I was in a blues band, a bluegrass band. Um, I sang at all kinds of things. I did, loads of small things, and I started to know that there was something in me that needed to do something different.
So I'm sensing then that music was something that you were interested in, but you had to get a proper job, as they used to say
Mm.
in those days. When did it actually become your career?
Oh, it took years. I moved to London, and then I started joining bands, and the bands were varyingly interesting and successful or not. And I met people, and I had a boyfriend who got me into a recording session, and I realized that I didn't know anything. I went into a studio with these people who were, oh my God. And I just kind of went, okay, I don't know anything. And people would tell me things and advise me, and I had a couple of opportunities that you do, and then they don't work but they're not because of you. It's because we take your voice off and put Cleo Lanes on, you know, that sort of thing. And that happened a couple of times. So I got a couple of real whacking knocks. Um, and then I met Michael Parker and Jerry, and we became the Three Courgettes. And I would say that's when it really started. And I think all of the things I learned learning the songs that we did then, and all the music I'd listened to up to that point, and the way that they informed me, it was my first mega lesson. And then I went from that to doing Younger and Parker, and then, of course, we did the work with Julian, um, and the alternative cabaret circuit, and I was just learning and learning and learning. I was just fortunate that some things came my way and people came my way who wanted to share what they knew because they loved it so much. They weren't particularly ambitious for power or fame or any of those things. They just loved music.
Let's get on to your second choice then. I Can See for Miles, and you referenced this at
This is my
Leeds.
third.
Sorry, your third. Forgive me.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get on to your third. I Can See for Miles. So I'm so engrossed in your story.
The Who. I loved The Who. I loved The Who growing up. I just thought the songs were fantastic. And I loved the kind of bile that Pete Townsend got into things. And there was always this kind of simmering rage, which of course Roger Daltrey play. And so that was kind of interesting. 'cause it was inside the lyric, but not played. And I thought they were a complete band. Quite recently, I had to drive to Chipping Norton, and I went with, the director, Peter Glanville, and I said, "Oh, shall we listen to The Who's on Spotify?" So I put on The Who on Spotify in the car, and it was everything that they've ever done all jumbled up. And we kept going, "God, they were brilliant. They were brilliant. This is so clever. God, the arrangements are fantastic. The singing, the playing, oh, they were so." So I chose that because I've sung substitutes on my marquee, and so I kind of am owning that one for myself. But I Can See for Miles, I just love the sense of it. I love the sense that you can see over the through the roofs and over the houses, the person that did you wrong. You know, I can see for miles.
As you were just saying that, I was looking back at your selection, and your first two are American artists,
Yeah,
and The Who, your first British
yeah.
choice. That's quite telling, actually, but
Yeah,
not in a
oh,
bad
they're
way.
not they're not chronological, to be
No,
fair. None of these are chronological. They're all melded together, and
but
yeah.
as we know, talent is universal, and music is a universal language anyway. So it wasn't a criticism, just an
No, and
observation.
also, you pick 6 tracks, and then you think, "I could have easily picked those
Oh yeah.
6. I could have easily picked those 6." So these were the ones that came on that day that you asked me.
How was university as a young student, as an older child? Was it as daunting as some people imagine it can be? Or hearing about this rebellious streak in you, did you let go, for want of a better expression?
Yeah, I mean, I was a bit off the rails, really. I think I was an off the rails. I I my parents didn't know how, I mean, how could they? How everything operated here, and so I'd never learnt that. So university for me was a kind of a waking up to the level of sophistication a lot of people my own age had, and of being aware that I didn't have that. And I mean, there's always been in me a kind of bit of a naive, um, I'm trying to think of, like a sort of walking through the lilies, and not seeing what's going on. And on the other hand, there's a part of me that sees everything. So it but that little naive bit of me had a big waking up. Yeah.
So was it easy for you to make friends at university?
Yeah, I never had any problem with that. I mean, I know some people find that really hard, but actually, I have friends from university that are still friends now. And one of my closest friends from Stockport, where I grew up, my Who period, um, she she died of pancreatic cancer a little while ago, but she came to Leeds as well. And when I met her, we became firm friends and shared a flat. And
So
then
did you
she
move in
shared a flat
together?
with me in London. Yeah. Pardon?
So you moved in together?
So we moved in together in Leeds because we'd been living in separate places, and we had that sort of bond of Stockport. And then in London, she came and moved in to the flat I was living in, which was a shared flat.
So when you were trying to make it as a musician, as the Three Courgettes,
Yeah.
how were you surviving? How were you managing to, keep living in London?
Oh, skin of your teeth, you know. But we had gigs. We did really good gigs. We had a little record deal with Island Records, and we had a minor hit, Three Courgettes baking a salad, baking a ballad. If you want to rock and roll, dip your hip in the salad bowl.
Come on, give us a line or so. Sing us.
3 courgettes, making a salad, 3 courgettes, baking a ballad. If you want to rock and roll, dip your hip in the salad bowl.
Sounds like a jingle for a commercial.
Well, funnily enough, we did one for veggie burgers. Veggie burgers give you more, get them at your health food store. And we were invited to this big organic food, which is where we sang it, thing in Brighton, conference, I guess, you know, display thing. And there was, what was she called? Um, White hair. She had all the dogs, the poodles. She was related to the Queen. Um, she wrote
Barbara
romance
Stanton?
novels.
Not Barbara
Barbara
Stanton.
Cartland.
Cartland.
Barbara Cartland swarmed through with all these dogs hanging off her and just being given samples, samples, samples. She walked out with a truckload of organic food, free. She knew how to milk it.
So, how are you now finding life living in London, having moved away from your parents? You're enjoying a little bit of success and you've been signed to a record label. I mean, I know it still couldn't have been easy because you probably weren't making that much money still.
No, I didn't make any money till I was about, I don't know, 50. No, that's not true, 'cause when we started to work on the cabaret circuit, we had a lot of gigs, and then I had a lot of gigs with Younger and Parker, and we did the Julian stuff. So, my carpet downstairs, I bought off, Sticky Moments. That was off my Sticky Moments fees.
How did you meet Julian?
He was appearing with us on the same bill at Shepherd's Bush. It was called the Bush, I think, Cabaret, Bush Cabaret. And, I had a bandana on, and he made fun of it. And then we got up on stage and did our music, and he came up at the end and said, "I would never have done that if I'd known you were a performer." And so we became friends. He invited me to tea, and from that, we did Edinburgh together.